there's only so many hours in the day, and you truly can only do so much. And when you're a doer, people see that you're a doer, and they hope that you will also do things for them. Welcome back to the Roots and Dirt podcast. A couple episodes ago, we discussed ditching the idea of self-sufficiency and replacing that with the mindset of community efficiency. And within that podcast, I talked about how it's important to ruthlessly eliminate things from your life. Now, that sounds harsh, right? And I don't necessarily mean you need to go through and cut everything that isn't necessary out of your life. I actually disagree strongly with that mentality. Because I think it just leads to replacing all of those things with other things that really don't matter. But I do believe that it is important to reassess your life and what you are doing with it a number of times over your lifetime. For me, this happens every handful of years, maybe every 3 to 5 years. I find myself needing to reassess all the things that I'm doing. Part of that is simply because my life circumstances have changed, right? There's children leaving, there's children growing and changing and making different choices. Part of that is just out of necessity because things are out of my control. Now, let's be really clear. This is obviously, as I've stated, not the first time that I have done this. I know that we all wish that this could be a one and done thing and that maybe next time it'll be different. But the reality is that your life is always changing, circumstances are changing, and you need to be able to evolve with it. I know a number of people hate change. I am not one that dislikes change. I feel like my whole life has just been filled with one change after the next. Change does not bother me. It can be uncomfortable, right? But it's an uncomfortable that is necessary for growth. Now, another thing that I feel like I should be kind of clear about in this situation is that I'm not talking about the elimination of physical things from my life, right? I'm not talking about the elimination of people from my life. I'm not talking about becoming a minimalist. I actually strongly disagree with that whole movement in many ways. But we won't talk about that now because that's kind of irrelevant to this conversation. I often joke that my husband has been married to at least 6 versions of me, and that is probably an understatement. Maybe in a day he could come across 6 different versions of Letta. Who knows? But at any rate, I am not the same person that I was when we first met. I'm not the same person I was when we first got married. And I'm not the same person I was 10 years ago. Praise God that I am not, right? That I have hopefully changed for the better over the years, that I've matured, that I have gained wisdom. None of us should strive to be the same person that we were when we first got married. I don't want my husband to stay the same person he was when we were first married. I don't want to change everything about him either, but we should mature and grow and develop. If you asked my 18-year-old self if one day I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom of 4, I probably would have laughed at the question. And now I can't think of a more important, more fulfilling way to live my life. Each season of my life, each season of your life brings new joys, new struggles, new hardships, new desires and goals. And it is ridiculously easy to find yourself with way too many irons in the fire. And sometimes you need to take some of those irons out. So how do I know if it's time to reevaluate things? Well, 1, usually my house is a hot mess, and I don't mean hot mess like, oh, there's just stuff everywhere and it can get cleaned up. I mean hot mess and like I can't remember the last time I deep cleaned anything, much less my whole house, which, let's be honest, doesn't ever really get deep cleaned all at once ever anyway. But if it's building up and building up and building up and I cannot remember the last time that I had time to actually clean my house well, that's sign number 1. Sign number 2 is that there are always dishes left in the sink when I go to bed. Always. Like, not just a little, but a whole lot of dishes left in my sink all the time when I go to bed. I can't stand waking up to a giant pile of dishes. Sometimes during canning season, maybe I'll end up with some extra things that just didn't quite get cleaned up before I went to bed. And that's fine, but I mean, like, if all the supper dishes are still there because I didn't have time to unload or even to delegate someone to unload the dishwasher so it could get reloaded. We're not talking hand scrubbing all these dishes. We're talking I couldn't even get them in the dishwasher so the dishwasher could wash them for me. That's a problem. Second one is bedtime. Like, what bedtime? Is there a bedtime? I don't know. I'm a night owl, but I really try hard to get to bed at a reasonable hour. Now, for me, a reasonable hour is like 10 o'clock. If I can get to bed at 10 o'clock, I can be up at 6 and I've gotten a good full 8 hours of sleep, and I really, really need 8 hours of sleep. My body does not thrive on less than 8 hours of sleep. Praise God if some of you can. I know my husband doesn't need 8 hours of sleep and he does fine, but I really do need that. And so if I'm lacking in the sleep department, that's a big no-no on my list at this point in time in my life. That leads to me being very short-fused with my husband and my children. I like to call it snarky. They would probably call it snarky as well, or cranky, or whatever it might be, but I just get kind of irritable, almost like I'm hangry, but I'm just like that all the time, right? Like, I'm not finding joy in anything. I'm just constantly annoyed by everything. That is a huge sign to me that I need to reevaluate things. Another sign that I'm doing too much is when I can't remember the last time that we tried to watch a family movie where I didn't have my work laptop in my lap. I'm a fidgeter and a doer anyway. When we watch movies, I have a really hard time just sitting still, right? Like, I'm just a kinetic learner. And so I fidget all the time when we're watching movies. It can be anything. I just have to have something to do, even if that just means eating popcorn, right? But if my laptop is always in my lap because I'm editing some photos for something, or I have some website work to finish up, or I didn't have time to do X, Y, and Z, so now I am placing said order when we're supposed to be watching a movie. Another sign that I have way too much on my plate and I need to reevaluate is if I am beginning to regularly miss deadlines or am constantly running behind. If I'm always rushing to meet the next deadline, it means that I haven't had enough time previously to work on said thing. Now, I do believe that it is important to delegate your time out and that you don't always need to be working on everything way far in advance. But I shouldn't be constantly rushing for every little deadline under the sun to where I don't even know if I'm going to be getting it done, right? And then X, Y, and Z are being pushed out because I didn't have time to get this one done in time, so now this one's behind. It's just like a vicious cycle, right? So that's a huge sign to me that I need to reevaluate stuff. Another one is cooking becomes a chore. Now, if you know me personally, you know that I am a total foodie. One of the main reasons why we grow so much of the things that we do and why we source food the way that we do is because I want the best quality things that I could possibly cook with, right? Those things don't have to be expensive. Best quality doesn't mean expensive. Best quality just means most delicious. So if I am not finding enjoyment in preparing a meal for my family, because let's be honest, I have kids that just don't like breakfast. We've got teenage boys. One of them likes to eat breakfast. The other two could care less about breakfast. Two of them are not home for lunch. My husband's gone for lunch. So it's just two of us at home over lunch. And so really it's just one meal that I'm having to cook for our family each day. And if I can't find joy in cooking the one meal, or it's hard to even figure out how to get the one meal on the table, I need to reevaluate stuff. And lastly, and certainly not least, if I feel like I am always running on fumes, like my body is so inflamed, I have tendinitis really bad in my hands, and that flares up through all of the work that I do, right? Whether that be photography work or website work or garden work, all of those involve my hands. And movements with my hands that cause my tendinitis to flare up. So that goes all the way up into my neck. If I'm constantly getting migraines, if my acid reflux starts coming back, a whole plethora of things, right? But if I am just constantly run down day after day after day, and I wake up and I'm not refreshed and I'm just more tired, that's a sign that I definitely need to reevaluate things. Now, I'm not talking about temporary seasons of life where things get crazy. We all have things that happen unexpectedly, right? There's tragedy, there's hardships, there's just, my child decided to join this thing and now we're gone constantly and I wasn't really planning for that, right? Like, there are seasons in life that get really hard. I remember when my husband used to work nights and all the time, and those went from being just like a few weeks stint in the winter to now it was 3 months where he was working 12 to 15 hour shifts 7 days a week at night, and it was just really hard, right? So there's seasons where you just have to get through, right? You're just doing the things that you need to do to get by. But when the things that you've developed in that season become long-term habits, when that lifestyle becomes the normal, that's what I'm talking about. That's when I reevaluate stuff, right? Not in the temporary crazy season that it will pass, but when that becomes a regular thing. So, after that kind of long introduction into this, what is it that I start with, right? So that's how I know that I need to reevaluate my life and what's happening in it and what I'm doing, right? But then where do I start? Well, I start with my non-negotiables. What are the things in my life that if everything else failed, if I dropped the ball on everything else, what are the things that absolutely are most important to me that I am unwilling to negotiate with? And ultimately, that always comes down to 3 things: my husband, my children, and my relationship with the Lord. Those 3 things matter the most to me. From those 3 things, there are other things that are important to me, important that I do, regarding those 3 things, right? And so once you have your most important things down, or people, whatever that is, mine often are people, right? They're not things because the things don't really matter to me. Once you have that, then I go, okay, well, now what is it in those things that matters most to me? In the caring for my children, in the loving of my husband, in building my relationship with the Lord, what is most important to those situations, right? For me, we'll take it really simple this way. One of the things with my children is I want time to be able to have a relationship with them, right? I want to be the one raising them. I don't want to need to send them to someone else. I don't want to have to send them to daycare. Obviously, my kids are older now. None of them need daycare. They can all watch themselves. But I want to be having those conversations with them. I want to be able to pick them up from practice. When they're sick, I want to be able to care for them. When they're hungry, I want to be able to have food in the refrigerator in a pantry that's stocked with things, right? Like I want to be able to care for them well. within that, it's very important to me that I'm providing them with the best nourishment possible. This is for my husband and myself and my children, right? Like, I want to be providing the best quality food, nutrient dense food that I can for them, because I really do believe that that is a staple in a healthy life. And it is essentially what you're going to work for, right? It's what you're going to work so you can buy the food. Well, this way I can grow the food and then taxes don't come out of it. Nobody's taxing my tomatoes or my potatoes or whatever else it might be, right? I don't have to work an hourly wage, have the government take 30% of it, and then also go buy food at the store. This way I can just grow my food and it's mine. I want to be able to have the time to think through a pantry and what can we stock it with at the best price, right? Or like, how can I buy the best quality things for my family? All of those types of things I'm thinking about, right? And then essentially what I end up with, or for instance, with my husband, right? I want to be available for him and not be cranky about it. I want to be able to go to bed at the same time as him and not be up for 3 more hours cleaning the house and doing dishes or starting loads of laundry with the kids' sports stuff, right? All of those things matter to me. I want to be able to greet him when he comes home and not be cranky. I don't want to be crabbing at him the whole time that he is in our home because I had a bad day, right? Or because I was so overloaded with all my stuff that I still have too much stuff to do. I want to be able to provide clean clothes for them and not be constantly behind on laundry, right? Like, all of these things are things that I'm thinking of. What is involved in the care of my husband and my children that builds my relationship with them and provides for them in the best way possible. So anything that doesn't fit that, I put on a maybe this should be eliminated list, right? So let's just look at my list of things that I was doing prior to the elimination, right? So I was working full-time hours for the most part doing website builds, okay? I was contracted out through a local cultural center, and so that was a lot of work, plus logo design. This all my website graphic design work, right, was an almost full-time job. Was more than a full-time job if I added in the fact that I also did a lot of photography for local things, right, for sporting events and things like that. And then I was editing those images and getting those to families. Other things I was doing involved we were homeschooling our kids. I run a local farmers market. I sell produce at the local farmers market. We grow most of our own produce. We raise chickens. We raise meat birds. We don't raise chickens for eggs. Part of my community sufficiency is I can't do all of that, right? So we purchase eggs. We were trying to start this podcast. We were running to all of the kids' sports things between all of our different children, hauling them to and fro. I grow plants in the springtime to sell at the market, but also special orders for many people within our community for their gardens. So that's thousands of baby plants that grow and leave my garage each year. I was starting to write a biblical womanhood study. We are remodeling the upstairs of our house. And this is just a quick little brush over all of the things that I was responsible for. So ultimately, what do I land on, right? Well, I stopped worrying about getting every single photograph edited and put up for parents from basketball games and football games. I stopped developing the biblical womanhood study and focused more on just reading the word for myself, which fits into my building my relationship with the Lord. I stopped doing any preservation in the evenings. As soon as it was time to start making supper, I stopped whatever I was doing. It didn't matter if it was work related, if it was home related. I started cooking instead. And I didn't do any work besides dishes and little bits of things here and there, maybe a load of laundry or something after supper time. I stopped putting pressure on myself to bring every single type of thing that we could possibly grow to the farmer's market. And I stopped doing photography at the farmer's market. I cold stored more of our vegetables this year, and I canned a lot less. And then I just gave away or sold what was excess so that I didn't have to deal with it anymore. I refused to work during family movies. And I forced myself to go to bed when my husband goes to bed, except for when he goes to bed really early, like if he's had a really long day and he's totally wiped and he ends up in bed at like 8:30, 9 o'clock. I just can't do that. But I attempt to go to bed closer to when he goes to bed. All of these things I started eliminating, right? I also did not take on any more website jobs. And I only did a few photography sessions this fall and winter. We also stopped trying to record podcasts and writing blog posts. So I really was down to kind of the bare bones, and my body needed it. It needed it worse than I ever thought that it did. At this point, I was down to only photographing really just a few basketball games through the season this winter. I'm not doing any photography sessions currently, and I'm down to finishing up one website that needs some fine tuning. Now, it doesn't mean that I won't take some of these things back on, right? But obviously we've started recording podcasts again, but it's taken about 9 months for my body to finally start recuperating. I'm also not growing plant starts out for the community this year. I'm just doing just a couple family members and our plant starts because, again, that fell into the bucket of caring for my family. And caring for my family and feeding them nutritious food means I start hundreds of little baby plants in our garage for our garden each year. We have a son that is graduating this spring here in just a couple weeks. And so because of that, I chose to not take on a bunch of extra things like growing the plant starts and things like that. I wanted to be able to focus on what needed to be done for that. Now, that's not to say that all of this didn't come with a sacrifice as well, right? Because without taking on more jobs, that obviously means less income. But it's less income. That more income comes at the expense of my family suffering and me suffering, right? And I would much rather be in better health and have a family that loves and cares and is joyful with one another and has time for one another than a family that's constantly crabby, icky, living in a hot mess of a house, eating junk because I don't feel like or don't have time to cook. To me, it's worth the sacrifice. And this is also a season, right? My life won't always have 3 teenage boys in it. Our daughter has already left. So there will come a time when I can work more hours and I can bring in more income, but this is not the time for that in my life. Now, that doesn't mean it's not what you need to be doing, right? We all have to make our own choices when it comes to what we eliminate. But for me, that's what I need to eliminate, right? I need to eliminate all of the extras that I was doing. It didn't mean that they were bad things. They were good things. But I just don't have, there's only so many hours in the day, and you truly can only do so much. And when you're a doer, people see that you're a doer and they hope that you will also do things for them. We have all experienced that, right? And I feel like the thing that must not be named from the last handful of years only accentuated that, because there were less people willing to do things, right? And because there were less people willing to do things, or less people in the workforce, or all, just you name the thing, right? Because less people were available, those who were still willing to do the things had excess things dumped on their plate, and you were never meant to carry all of that, right? And so it's really, really important to look at each stage of life differently. That's how I've eliminated stuff, and I would love to hear, if you've gone through this process, what it is that you do. Now, I say that I wasn't eliminating physical things, but inevitably the ability to have time, right, meant that I actually could go through our house and get rid of the things that were just sitting around that no one was using, the excess clothes that no one fit in anymore, X, Y, and Z, you name it, right? Like, there is absolute benefit to having that time. We're actually getting the remodel upstairs mostly done after our children sleeping in couches and air mattresses for the last year. My gosh, I mean, those things are just unnecessary, right? Like, we never needed to get to that point. And so I would highly recommend that you go through this process as well, that you sit down and you go, what is it that matters most in my life? And then within those things, what are the most important things that I do so that those things function well? And then after that, you can add in more things if you have time, right? But weigh those very heavily. What do you have to give up if you add that in? So just things to consider. I hope that this helps in some way. We're going to jump back into pantry and garden and stuff on this next episode. But I really felt like this part of that previous podcast needed to be touched on, because I do feel like it is extremely important. And I also feel like it is something that as homesteaders, we get sucked into so easily, because we just want to do all the things, right? Partly because it sounds exciting, and it's fun to be able to provide those things for your family. But the reality is that oftentimes we get sucked into things that drain our family more than they provide for our family. So I hope that this helped, and I hope that you will subscribe and join me in the next podcast. It's been fun getting back into these again. Thanks for joining me on the Roots and Dirt podcast. We'll see you next time.